What's good, servant leaders? Welcome back to the Services Power Podcast. This is episode number 11. We are so excited. Thank you guys so much for continuing to reach out to us at hello@servicespower.org. Thanks for so many emails, continuing to tell us your stories, what you're thinking, how you're feeling about the podcast. We need to continue to hear from you. What is it that you're needing to hear? How can we continue to help you? How can we help you grow? We want to continue to bring people, ideas, guests on the podcast. They're going to give you everything you need to be the servant leader that you and we need to be. We've got some exciting things coming down the pike. Just 2018 is almost over, but we're not done. We got a couple more podcasts coming this year. We've got some exciting things around the corner, but 2019 is going to be fantastic. I can't wait for 2019. The podcast is going to expand. It's going to grow. We're going to have a social media presence as well here on the Services Power Podcast. Also, the expansion of the website. There's going to be some cool things on the website as well. And we're going to have a treat for you. If you know anybody, if you know somebody who's serving their tail off and they're giving their all in service, but they're slowing down, maybe the steam is running out of their life, they might be a bit burnt out. We've got a resource. We've got something that's going to help them put it into their hands. It's free. It's going to be showing up here on the Services Power Podcast website, servicespower.org. We're so excited about it. One of the reasons that we're unable to sustain when we get going in momentum in life is because we need to continue to develop our identity, which is exactly what this episode is all about. I'm so excited about my mentor that's jumping on this thing, Link Wilfley. He's the president of Wilfley Companies, a series of businesses developed around fifth generation owned and run industrial pump manufacturer A.R. Wilfley and Sons Incorporated. Before devoting his work full time to Wilfley, Link was mostly known for his professional rugby career, a journey which led him around the world to live in 5 different continents and compete at a professional level in over 30 different countries. Servant leaders, are you ready for the fire? Are you ready for the passion? It is going to be lit up. If you're not sitting down, if you're not relaxed, I guarantee you, you're going to want to be. Link Wilfley is coming at you. This is my guy. I'm so excited. Let's go. Welcome back to the Services Power Podcast, servant leaders. I am so amped. Of course, you guys know I'm always amped up. I'm always excited. Now, the person I got on the podcast today is a story. And in our last podcast, I talked to you guys about getting a mentor, getting somebody who can really speak to where you're going in life. And the person I got on the podcast today is exactly that for me. As many of you know, I'm in the United States military. I'm about to get into retirement, and I'm looking for somebody to coach me and show me what the next steps in life should be. And so I reached out to a couple of people, and I got sent over from the person that I thought I initially wanted to talk to another guy. And he's a part of this foundation called Valor Bridge. This is strictly built for military veterans, but I'm telling you right now, if you're listening to this podcast, servant leader, this is not going to be a military talk. This is definitely for you. What we've got to talk to you about today is going to be fantastic. But just the story between Link and I, he is one of the founders of Valor Bridge Foundation. He is amazing. He took me on. Typically, it's a local program, and since we're so geographically dislocated, he decided, hey, I'm going to do a call with you, and we've connected on such a deep level. Impact Servant Leadership. He is helping build the foundation of Impact Servant Leadership. So really, the Services Power Podcast is built on top of the foundation of Impact Servant Leadership. So really, everything that you've heard on this podcast so far, you can directly link to this guy's leadership, this guy's perspective. I want to introduce you all to Link Wilfley, one of my deepest and closest mentors. He's so fantastic. He's the president of Wilfley and Sons. Listen, Link, I'm so glad to have you on the podcast today. How the heck are you?
I couldn't be better. I am just as amped as you are to be here. Thank you for having me.
Listen, servant leaders, Link is a rugby player. I don't know if there's a such thing as a former rugby player, but Link is a rugby player, and you're going to hear it in his attitude. You're going to hear it in the way he talks. He's just a hard-nosed, fun-loving guy. Because when I watch rugby, I've never played rugby, okay? I am too much of a wuss to play rugby. But when I watch rugby, it looks like, yeah, they're knocking each other around. They're out there trying to score, but they're also having a ton of fun just being together, being a team. That's why I love Link's leadership style. Link, could you just kind of tell us about Valor Bridge, about you, about what you guys have got going on? Whether you're talking about Valor Bridge, whether you're talking about Wilfley and Sons, what's up with you? Can you kind of just introduce yourself a little bit?
Absolutely. My name is Link Wilfley. I am from Denver, Colorado. I am co-founder of the Valor Bridge Foundation, which is essentially a leadership development program for transitioning veterans of war. We focus primarily on a graduate degree level curriculum for vets, and then afterwards we pair them up with local mentors here that would be a good match for them. So it's not one of those programs where it's hey, good for you, little tap on the backside and good luck out there in the real world. We match them up with leaders here as they continue their endeavors. On the business side of it, how I make money, I run an industrial manufacturing facility where we produce hard iron and stainless steel castings, create industrial product and sell it all around the world.
So cool, Link. Thanks a lot. You're just talking about not leaving people in the lurch. Can you talk about how that helps shape identity and servant leaders? This is what this conversation, our talk is going to be about today, about identity as a leader. Link has really helped shape my identity as a leader. Can you talk a little bit again, Link, about identity as a leader and not leaving people in the lurch? Kind of go a little deeper on that.
Absolutely. Let's start off by saying one real thing about identity and leadership. Identity is not important to a leader or somebody that's looking to be a leader. Identity is extremely important to anybody, any individual out there interested in developing themselves. So we're not really talking about leaders out there in the world. We're talking about individuals that want to develop themselves. Identity for me has been that go-to word and that go-to concept to be able to create that development of the self for myself. Now, if I look at leadership, let's put it into four simple ways, because a leader essentially really only has four things. Number one, they know some things, what ought to be. And it doesn't matter if it's personal, professional, sport. These leaders, they know some things. They know what the future should look like, what it ought to be, what the play ought to be, what the business ought to be, what the relationship ought to be. That's number one. Number two, they have the courage to see it through. Because when you have a vivid vision and you know where you're going in the future, you have to have that courage and that grit to see it through to get there. Because you're going to come across disagreements. You're going to come across confrontation. You're going to come across your past and what's always been. And no, you can't do it that way. You have to see it through. You have to have that courage. Number two. Number one, you know some things. Number two, you've got the courage. Number three, you know how to do some things. You know how to put it into action. Not only do you see what ought to be, you know how to do it. It's like my kids just the other day. Oh, man, they ought to have something like that. Fantastic. Do you know how to do it? That's the point. You got to be able to know how to do some things as well. Number four, you got to be emotionally intelligent. And I'm not just talking about emotionally intelligent with others. I'm talking about emotionally intelligent with yourself. You got to be emotionally mature. You got to know some things. You got to have courage. You got to be able to do some things. And you got to have that emotional intelligence with others to create that team to get there, and with yourself. And this is the key point and where identity comes in. When I talk about emotionally intelligent or emotionally mature with others, I'm really talking about with yourself. And that's where identity comes in. Identity, to me, is the past of you, the present of you, and the future of you.
Servant leaders, do you see why I love Link so much? Do you hear that? There's such a passion in understanding who we are as people. And so many times we can get lost if we don't have clear, concise, and specific direction on where we've been, where we currently are, and where we're going. Link knows that I love emotional intelligence. What you're talking about is a quote from a guy by the name of Jon Boyd, right? You talked to me about Jon Boyd's quote about how you can go one way and be somebody, or you can go another way and do something. And this is that leadership development that you're that you're talking about. Can you dig a little deeper into that Jon Boyd quote and pull out some nuggets for us, some more nuggets, as you really have? You've dropped some flavor bombs on us, some knowledge bombs on us before. If you could go into that, that would be really cool.
Absolutely. So the context in which I read Mr. Boyd concerning being someone versus doing something, what he's talking about on being somebody is that typical, I want to be somebody. And the context is, be somebody really means I'm out for the title. I'm out for the money. I'm out for the material items. I'm out for the social standing. I'm out for the status. I'm out for the attention. That's being someone. And that's what he means when he says, are you out there trying to be someone, or are you out there trying to do something? And when he's talking about doing something, he's talking about the people that sit around and thinking about being something or doing something, and that's all they're thinking. They're not ever going to get there, because you have to put into action. You have to do things to get things done. Now, when you look at identity and you look at any type of leadership development, self-development, what have you, that aspect of identity, of looking into your past and understanding where you come from, what characteristics you have, what's your heritage, what's your blood, what's your DNA, what are the terrible things that have happened to you? What are the great things that have happened to you? What has brought you here to the present? You now have a free will. You now have a choice. You now have a decision of what you want in the future. And using all that past as power, as fuel to get a very clear picture of what you want in the future, make that decision, but it'll never happen if you stay there and you just keep thinking about, I want to be someone. I want to be like that. I want to do these things in the future. You got to put it into action. And what Jonathan Boyd is really talking about is, are you out for the material items? Are you out for the social standing and the status and the titles? Because if you are, you're going to do and you're going to say whatever it takes to get there. And if you do and say whatever it takes to get there, what you really are is a sellout. You're not true to yourself. You're not true to your past legacy. And you're doing what you think society wants you to do. You're doing what you think is what the group wants you to do. And what he's really saying is, be true to yourself and do the things that are true to yourself, no matter what toes you step on and no matter how many people you're pissing off.
We have to have some intestinal fortitude about the choices that we're going to make. Link, do you have a personal story or a story of somebody around you that has been through that moment, that consternation with being somebody versus doing something, and then making that choice, the tough choice to not follow in the crowd, but to be authentically who they are?
I'll just provide the example of myself. And besides, if I talked about somebody else, I probably wouldn't do a good enough job. And they'd probably call me back up and say, hey, man, if you're talking about me, you got to make me look good. So let me talk about myself, because no matter what I say, I'm not going to be able to make myself look good. So when I came down, we all come across crossroads. We all come across ways where we need to make decisions. And I came across a decision a long time ago that made me come face to face of, which way are you going to go? And I had a very hard time understanding what was the right thing to do. Was it the right thing to come back to Colorado and understand what is going on in the family and in the business? Or is the right thing to do to keep developing myself and try to broaden my perspective and understand more things about the world? Both paths were very good paths. It came across that path of that question of, well, what exactly is the motivation behind each path? Because if there's an inkling of motivation behind one path of money and context and social standing, of some other influence or some other distraction, then that isn't being true to yourself. And I had come up to a point in my life and in my career where going down one path was essentially for that status. And so that personal travel, that personal rugby career, that personal accomplishment in the athletic field had run its course, and the motivation wasn't the right motivation. And what was the right thing to do? The right thing to do for myself, the right thing to do for my family, and the right thing to do in the world was to have a better understanding of what was obviously going wrong on the other side. Now, my ego was bashing the hell out of me, going, what are you doing, man? Your life is out for yourself, and you need to go out there. You're only 25 years old. You still got 5-10 years left. You can still make some money, live in Europe, still have the international career. You've been to almost 30 countries competing professionally. We can do this more, man. And you got such great stories. Everybody loves you. You're a character because you get wild. You're the rugby guy. It wasn't the right thing to do because there was something wrong going on. And so when I saw it, I identified it, and I spoke up to say, somebody needs to take some responsibility to make some right moves. Everybody turned around and looked right back at me and said, what are you talking about?
Servant leaders, there's a question in there that I really want us to hear and feed on and understand. First question is, what's your motivation? Why are you a servant leader? Why are you who you are? Why are you doing what you're doing? And the second one is, have you checked your ego? Have you checked what's going on internally on the inside? What's driving you? Where you're focused at? What's pushing you to make some of the decisions that you're making? What is it that you're saying to yourself? What's the self-talk like? What's going on in your own head? What are your goals? What are your aspirations? Because if your aspirations are to lift yourself up and to prop yourself up, like a lot of what Lincoln's talking about, your career, about your fame, fortune, whatever status of life, whatever that is, if that's what you're thinking, that it's possible that you need to re-examine and rediscover what your why is, what the question is that's really on the inside that's going to make you the best version of yourself. When you start to think about that, all of a sudden, doors will start to open. Your eyes will get wide as far as where you need to go and some of the decisions that you need to make. Now, Link, you made a decision, and it's led you to the place where you're leading this family business, your company, Wilfley & Sons. And I want to ask you, because you are somebody that has made the certain choice, you've made a specific choice that is a little bit different than many other businessmen. Can you talk about having the type of high principles that you've been instilled with, that you've chosen to have as a different type of business owner, a person with a little bit more principle, and knowing your identity and how that's kind of made you who you are as a businessman?
Absolutely. Two things come to mind. And after I've just gone off real quick on that rant and I've stepped off that soapbox, the listener might think to themselves, wait a minute. You made a decision of going back into the family business and running the business, and you're telling me you're not led by material items and social standing and status. You're the president now of a multi-million-dollar company, and you're telling me you weren't out for the title? I view it the exact opposite. I came in, I wanted nothing to do with this because I was leading my own life, and I was focused on doing what was right for me. And when I looked back and saw that nobody was taking responsibility and making the right moves for the employees of this company, that's when I started to check my ego to think, wait a minute, I actually got it opposite. I need to be the president so that I can make the right changes. Now, number two, the right changes. What exactly does that mean? And where are the principles and the values in running a business here? The reason why Wilfley does what it does is because we make decisions based on our principles and our values, which are very simple. We are out for excellence through the golden rule. Very simple. Excellence through the golden rule. And we base that off pride, integrity, urgency, and accountability. Pride in every single thing that we do. And it's essential, and it's sitting on everybody's desks, sitting on everybody's machine. Do you have pride in what you're doing? Do you take pride over yourself in the conditions in which you have your focus on? Do you have integrity? Do you do what you say? Because here we do what we say. Do you hold yourself urgent? Do we muck around and just do whatever we want? No, we have an urgency to do what's right. We have an urgency to have pride. We have an urgency to do what we say. And we hold ourselves accountable towards that striving to excellence. Now, does market share and money come? Yes, it does, but that's not our focus. We run a business. We have to have market share. We have to have money to run the business. Those are important aspects of it. But that's not why we're here. That just comes in time. That's like the doing and the being. If you really want to be someone in the future, you can maybe do that. You cannot control the future. You only control your action in present day. And so perhaps you're going to be that someone. Perhaps we do get market share or money in the future, but that's not how we get market share or money. That's not how we become something or someone by thinking about it. We do the right things and maybe, and perhaps eventually we'll get there in the future.
Link, you mentioned about your age coming into the company. You're 25 years old. And I think a lot of our listeners are around that age demographic when they're just coming out of college and they're trying to discover their career, what they're going to do next with their life. Can you talk to that specific person? Can you go back to 25-year-old Link and encourage him not only about his own identity, but about the identity of the company, corporation, the entity, organization that they're about to join, and why that's so important?
Absolutely. I'll touch on two things. Number one, a personal type of approach, and number two, a professional type of approach. And I'm going to go back in time and speak to 25-year-old Link, which is a very scary thing to do. Let's start with the personal piece and the motivation. And this is where identity has really helped me. Motivation behind things can come from love, and it can come from fear. It's important to be aware where your motivation is coming from, whether it comes from fear or whether it comes from love. And I group them into the two aspects because fear is essentially all the bad things that have happened to you, whether it's abuse, whether it's bullying, whether it's through intimidation, whether it's through terrible circumstances, whether it's through social standing and poverty. All the bad things that have happened to you essentially come from fear. And so you're just trying to get out of the hole. You're just trying to survive, and you're scared and you're pissed off and you're embarrassed and you're shamed. That's where fear comes from. There is absolute energy and there's absolute life from that type of motivation. Love is the support from your parents, perhaps, or your friends, or education, or a good teacher, or an inspiring book, or Lyle's podcast, or whatever leaders that are around that you identify with and you want to be like, or the books that you read, or the TV shows, or I kind of like that guy. That's motivation. That's inspiring. That's love. That's a source of wanting to be better. You want to be a better self. That comes from love. My point is this: motivation is just motivation. Both those sides are probably not true. That's your ego telling you what is true and what isn't. They aren't true. What they really are is energy. It's fuel. It's potential fuel that you can use to make incredible dreams in the future and put a plan towards it. So take all of that fear and take all of that love and put it right inside of your body and use it as energy, because it got you right here, right now. And if that abuse, if that fear, if that love, if anything else was different, you might not be right here, right now. And right here, right now is your free will. It's your God-given right to choose what type of person you want to be. Now look past and who you are and build what you want to be. That's the personal level. Professional level. Be curious, man. Be curious, be curious, be curious, be curious. Ask questions. Find the opportunity. Be curious about why people are pissed off at work, or why people like their jobs, or why people take so many breaks, or why people are on certain websites, and what job is this person doing, and why does it motivate them, and what do they like about it? What don't they like about it? What could be better? What other processes are there? What's the history of the company? What's the value of the company? Where's this company going? Be curious about all these things. It is incredible what you can uncover by just being curious about the concept of things that you walk by every single day. Concept in the conversation. Why is this girl talking so pissed off? Be curious about it. There's a story behind it. You can learn from that story. Why is this guy so excited? Jump on that wave of encouragement. Jump on that wave of excitement and be curious why. There's a story behind it. So number one, personal level, Mr. 25-year-old motivation. Everything in your past has brought you here right now for you to choose. Motivation. Number two, be curious. The people out there that are most curious about life have the best lives.
what is your identity discovery challenge for our listeners as we ride the wave to the end of this podcast episode?
Absolutely. Two things, which is essentially one thing. Pick up a piece of paper and a pencil and make a list of things that you want to do. Write down those things that you want to do. And if you don't know what you want to do, make some stuff up, because your subconscious down there wants to do things. And it can range from anything from traveling to Timbuktu to Istanbul, or to write a book, or to get a girlfriend, get a boyfriend, or finish college, or start a non-profit foundation. It doesn't matter. Write stuff that you want to do. And this is what you're going to do with it. You're going to create a credo. A credo is a mantra. It is a personal prayer. When you wake up in the morning, you're going to say that credo to yourself. And when you go to bed, before you go to bed at night, you're going to say that credo to yourself. It contains 6 sentences. I choose 6 sentences because there's 5 fingers on your hand and a fist. You're going to take the list of the things that you want to do, and you're going to create 6 sentences that you're going to repeat to yourself every single morning and every single night. 6 sentences: thumb, forefinger, middle finger, ring finger, pinky finger, and put it all together in a fist. That's how you're going to remember your 6 lines, your 6 credo of things that you're going to do.
That is so outstanding. That's beautiful. I'm actually going to go change my credo right now. 6 sentences in it, and I'm going to be pumping it, my fist, all the way through, all the way home. I'm so excited. How can we connect with you, Link? There's so much energy. There's so much passion. There's so much vision. There's so much of your identity is coming through this podcast. How can people get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch to me is to keep listening to Mr. Lyle's podcasts and check out valorbridge.org. Give me a shout. I am always open to a conversation.
Fantastic, Link, man. Thank you so much. This has been seriously one of the coolest podcasts we have done here in the Services Power podcast. Keep listening, guys. Keep going. Keep pressing and get your identity right. We will get you hooked up. Thanks so much, Link. There we go, servant leaders. I want to make sure we stay on point with Link's last piece of advice to us, the professional side, when he started to talk about being curious. This is going to be a key for every servant leader listening to this podcast episode. Every servant leader who hasn't heard this podcast episode that wants to grow and develop and be the best that they could possibly be. Even if you don't consider yourself a servant leader, I suggest that you put this information into another leader's hands. And that's being curious, because the answer to the questions that plague our people, the people we work with, the people that we live life around, that we have contextual understanding and significance with, is right in the middle of their life. And it's up to us to be able to uncover, unearth what's there, the treasure, the diamond in the rough. It's up to us to make sure that we dig in, that we dive in, that we're curious, that we're seeing and we're understanding what's going on. And sometimes, as Link was saying, it's just as simple and it's just as powerful as asking a laser-guided question. How many times have we really searched, really looked for the questions that are answering some of the most important things going on in the lives of the people that we're around? Once we begin to dig in, dive in, and understand them on a level that's deeper than just superficial, all of a sudden we become important people, and we're not being taken advantage of. We're not being walked over, but we're actually partnering up. We're building a family environment, an environment where people can be safe. They can be secure in who they are. And then all of a sudden we begin to grow together, and we become the best people in the best communities, in the best companies, in the best organizations possible. This is what servant leadership, this is what service being power is all about. Guys, I really hope you guys connect with the show notes at servicespower.org. Go on over there, or wherever you're listening to this podcast, whether it's on SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, iTunes, Google Play, wherever you're at, wherever you're hearing this thing. Go over to the show notes, check link out, check out what he's doing, what we're doing. And as we continue to move this thing along, we hope you continue to stay with us. Hit us up at hello@servicespower.org. We need to hear from you. We want to hear from you. Thanks for continuing to roll with us, and we will see you at the very next stop. We're on to the serve.